Hi, this is Andrew Leung and Karla Torres, and we have our English 45 multi-voiced assemblage today, and we're going to be exploring downtown Buena Park and talking about so many significant features that we found in there. So this first image is a picture of a street sign, and we see an intersection of San Diego and San Hernando. But I want to talk about San Diego and point to the history of this place because I think it's really important to consider, especially since we have Buena Park, a city that has a Spanish name in and of itself. So San Diego, of course, is a Mexican saint, and he was an indigenous man, and to many Catholic people, he's a very famous, very important figure. And it's important to consider that initially Buena Park was colonized and inhabited by Spanish people. Then it was transferred over to the Mexicans. Then it went to the U.S. And so we see this transfer in power going on. And I think that that's important to consider that, even today in 2021, we are able to still see these connections very prominently displayed in the street signs. And the significance of Juan Diego, St. Juan Diego's, is important also to consider because, according to the story, the Virgin Mary appeared to him in, I think, the 1500s, and that has been a very prominent symbol, Our Lady of Guadalupe, since then. And I think it points to the importance of looking at our Latinx community and particularly our Mexican community in Buena Park because of all these connections that we're able to make with the vernacular cultures that are still present today. And next we have a picture of some power lines. And remember that this project is supposed to look at many things in our city and town that we might not be able to see or even notice in our regular travels. But today we noticed the power lines, and what they really symbolize to us is that there are not just power lines carrying electricity, there are also power lines along racial and ethnic and gender powers. And for example, we can look at the demographics of Buena Park. We can see that there are a lot of white people here. There are a minority of other races here and ethnicities here, and I think that really speaks to the fact that there's some sort of interesting things going on with power, because power doesn't always have to be manifested through what we would normally think, which is electricity, but it can also be manifested in the ways that I mentioned, like economic power as well. And as I mentioned, we were walking in downtown Buena Park for this assemblage. And what's important to note about Buena Park is that there's a lot of focus on, you know, power and money and the people who are in positions that can influence us. Because we have all these flashy signs everywhere, and just having these power lines that you're seeing on the screen right now really attests to that fact. And I think that if we take this into consideration, we can get a greater understanding of the structures and the hierarchies that we are operating within. So you're seeing right now the Pirates Adventure Dinner Restaurant, which has a lot of boarded up windows. And this is a very incongruous site in downtown Buena Park because obviously of the boarded up windows. But as I was speaking about in the previous pictures, there are certainly power lines and structures that we have to be aware of and acknowledge here. Because when we see these boarded up windows, we must remember that recently there was a very contentious election in the United States for the president. And I think that when we see these boarded up windows of businesses trying to prevent riots from happening, to prevent them from being looted, it speaks to a larger fact, beyond Buena Park, downtown Buena Park, that we can see throughout the world of all these racial tensions and racial unrest that might be manifested in something as simple as boarded up windows that we can see in this downtown Buena Park scene in the Pirates Adventure Dinner Restaurant.
In this close-up image of Pirates Dinner Adventure, we can see that Buena Park and the owners of this restaurant really tried to commemorate the pirates' aesthetic the owners of this restaurant really try to bring a transcending time and death through the use of a skeleton and cannons, as well as images like the skull, swords, maps. And this is to bring life and death into this contemporary time, because many of these pirates, of course, have been dead for years, and using a skeleton is to really symbolize how death can be brought back to life in contemporary times, and this is why they were trying to recreate this image in Pirate's Dinner Adventure. Now, if we look closely at Portos, we can see that there's different time periods taking place with pirates and Portos and medieval times. For example, Portos is a more modern restaurant that's very popular in today's culture, and placing it in between these restaurants like Pirate's Dinner Adventure and medieval times is very impactful, because it's really trying to attract more customers into going to these areas. Right next to Portos, we have the restaurant Medieval Times, and we are now shifting to a different time period. We're going into the Middle Ages, and the owners of this restaurant really try to go for a castle aesthetic. As you can see on the marquee, there's a portcullis on it, and there's also on the sign the qualities of knights. They have messages that is a reminder to all, and it's kind of to get the individuals to feel chivalrous as well, just as knights are. So these messages on the sign is really just a reminder to be kind to all and be strong. And this is very relevant to today's time. It's really a reminder to get everyone to be strong and be kind to everyone on earth. Medieval Times is kind enough to reward the military for their valor, honor, just as knights were very chivalrous. For example, the military is fighting and going through struggles, but it's nice that the owners really want to commemorate these individuals for all of their hard work. Medieval Times has on the side of the wall, on the side of the castle, we can see that there is ivy, which really represents the authenticity that this restaurant was going for in establishing the castle. However, there's also a sense of false authenticity with the palm trees and the sign that is right next to it, because this brings a more modern, contemporary time period to this Middle Age where these signs wouldn't be shown. Also, palm trees are a symbol of Southern California, and it's giving a false sense of authenticity for the image that the owners were trying to go for, because most of these castles were in Europe, and in Europe there's not much palm trees that are there, so there's very false authenticity to how this was created. We can also see signs of contemporary times. If we look to the side, we can see that there are so many signal lights and signs, for example, the bus stop and signs for people with disabilities. And this is a great example of modern life, and how even the signal lights are very symbolic, because many individuals driving and are in transportation don't really pay attention to the actual restaurant Medieval Times unless there is a red signal lights, which indicates that they would pause and look at their surroundings. However, most of the time the light is green, and these passengers and drivers are not really paying attention to what is around them. We are now looking at Medieval Times from the other side of the street, and we can't help but notice how there is a maintenance worker doing his job, his task, and we're not really focusing on him. He kind of blends into the background, and it takes, and for us, we need to pause and take a look in order for us to notice how important these environmental workers are to our society. And it's crazy to think that most of us don't really pay attention or acknowledge how hard these individuals are working to keep our environmental clean. In this next image, we can see the mural of nights and how beautiful this looks, because we are really showing the owners are really trying to go for a aesthetic that really celebrates and brings appreciation to this middle-aged medieval culture. And it's really important to note the differences in families and colors, and how these knights are all fighting for different families. However, they are still all together as a whole, and that's a really important symbol to today's time. Now looking at these fences, and it's really covering an empty space, and that's because Buena Park is trying to welcome people visiting Buena Park, and also showing what kind of leisure they can experience by blocking the empty space with images of things to do and activities to do here in Buena Park. This is also a symbol of greed and spending money, because the city is deliberately covering an empty space and trying to show that there's much more fun activities to do, but you must spend money in order to have a great time in Buena Park. And covering up the empty space is very symbolic, because an empty space is just boredom and there's not much to do. But in order to have fun and do great activities, one must spend money. Now moving forward to this trash can, it was impossible to walk by and not notice this trash can. Now, trash cans have associations with disgust, and also many people use trash cans to throw away their unwanted items. However, this is a great distinction of the different social classes, because those who throw away the trash are those who really are trying to get rid of unwanted items. However, those who pick up the trash and gather things from the trash can are of a lower social class, and usually are using these items because they actually want and need it for survival. Unhoused individuals are usually the ones who pick things out of the trash can because they need these resources to survive. Also very important to note is this alley. This alley is really unimportant to many individuals, but it's very important to unhoused individuals, because they see this alley as more of a home, a place of comfort, a place where they can reside in. Whereas for other individuals, it's more of a gateway to get to the other side. No one uses alleyway to actually stay and park, because it's a no parking zone. However, the unhoused individual is staying here and has this cart here because they need a place to reside in, and this alley gives them this place of comfort to stay.
Okay, so now we're looking at an image of the Hard Rock Cafe, and specifically we've zoomed in on the head of the guitar with, of course, 6 tuning nuts, but let's pay attention to what it says. It says Buena Park on it. So, the Hard Rock Cafe is not exclusive to Buena Park, it's found in many other places. But, we think of rock as a uniquely American symbol, right? And for it to be very prominently displayed, this is one of the highest displays in downtown Buena Park. For it to be so prominently displayed just speaks to the power of rock music in the American psyche, and also in Americans' beliefs and cultural practices because of its high position here. And of course, the guitar is a very closely associated symbol. We could even say it's a metonym for what rock music is, and particularly hard rock. For some people, it might not be preferred, but that really has gotten us into different musical styles that can not only comment on but elicit social change. And now let's take a look at the Beatles. The Beatles, of course, were from Liverpool, England. And what I want to bring up here is that this picture of the Fab Four, the silhouettes of them, is really transnational. The Beatles were popular on both sides of the Atlantic, and it's really important to consider the indelible impression they've made, not only on pop music, but you know, uh, pop music of their time, but pop music of our time as well. Many children today will listen to the Beatles as great sources of inspiration and music. The next artist we see is in the form of an LP on the ground, and we thought this was very interesting because it's very reminiscent of what happens on Hollywood Boulevard and Vine Street for the Walk of Fame. But here we have a record of Elvis, who I want to bring up as being a very much a site of cultural hybridity. And what I mean by that is he took white musical forms. For example, the title track, the first track on this side of the LP, is from Carl Perkins, who was a white person who had white musical forms. But Elvis, what he did was very interesting. He also brought black musical forms and put them together with white musical forms to create something new and different. And that's what makes Elvis's music so special to a lot of people, because he's this contradictory sight. We can't really place him in one category, and this interstitial category that we can think of him in, as bringing together these white elements of music and these black elements of music, really make for a complicated character. And that's really important to consider when we're in Buena Park, which of course has a lot of influences from different cultures as well. Next, we see CCR, Creedence Clearwater Revival, another American band. And I'll talk about this band briefly. It's very much known for its songs like Have You Ever Seen the Rain? And those are, they have been turned into American anthems now. Young people, old people will know them, and they have been timeless American classics. So for the Hard Rock Cafe to have this LP record in the ground commemorating this group as well, it speaks to their immense power in not only influencing American culture, but just defining it.
3, 2, 1.
Next up, we are looking at the Police. Now, of course, we know the Police was a band. They were known for hits such as Every Breath You Take. But here, in 2021, the word police has a lot of different meanings for different people. Of course, as I mentioned, it can be the band. It can also be the police force that we're all familiar with. But it can also point to slogans that have been very popular recently, especially in the younger generation, such as ACAB. And when I see things like the Police on the side of the Hard Rock Cafe, I can't help but think of the social situation that we're embroiled in right now. And also think of, what the word police means to different people, especially with respect to color, to ethnicity, and to these other categories that we might not be associating the word police with on a regular basis. And finally, we are looking at Woodstock, a reminder of Woodstock in the form of an ad. And what Woodstock has meant to a lot of people is, the counterculture, fighting against the Vietnam War for love and peace and harmony. And, they were also for other things like illicit drugs. And that just really had the bohemian, really free range spirit that really captured the American feelings of that time. It really was the zeitgeist of the time. And Woodstock being commemorated here at the Hard Rock Cafe really is important in us commemorating this event from the Summer of Love so many years ago, but it still has a very much indelible impact on the people of today.
In this next clip, we can see the differences in targeted customers based off the restaurants that are here. In this Hard Rock restaurant, of course, the targeted customers were those who love rock and those who love rock music. In this next restaurant, we can see that Koreans are really the targeted customers because of the Korean migration into Buena Park, which I'll get more in depth in a bit. The last targeted customers are across the street in this restaurant. that has a Buddhist symbol, a Buddhist statue on top of it.
2, 1.
The image of Siddhartha Gautama, or Buddha, is very important to note because Buddhism brings enlightenment, or the state of peace and wisdom, and it makes individuals stop and really think about the importance of peace and this way of life. Buddha really transcends throughout the world. It first started off with Nepal, Asia, and now the US. And it's really important to bring up how it is an important symbol and is also shown in Buena Park, because at the beginning of this discussion we discussed how Buena Park discusses religion like Catholicism, and now we're going into different beliefs like Buddhism. It really shows how Buena Park is a very multicultural city. The architecture of this restaurant is important because it's very missionary and religious, and we can just see how religion and different beliefs are very important to this city. This next restaurant that I will be looking at is this Korean restaurant. It's relatively new to Buena Park, and it is important to note because there is a majority of Koreans who are migrated into Buena Park now. And as you remember, Buena Park is predominantly white, but now we have a large population of Koreans coming in. So this restaurant really is targeting to the new population that Buena Park is now having. This restaurant is very new and modern as opposed to the other restaurants that are shown that we have discussed. Most of these restaurants are old and run down, but because this is a new restaurant, because of the new population of individuals who are coming into Buena Park, it is a great way to show that Buena Park is starting to target others instead of just simply the dominant population of whites. Next to the Korean restaurant, we have a Pioneer Motel, and this is important to note because Pioneer Motels is starting to get into this old Western vibe that Buena Park is going for, and motels are really representative of tourism, and so because this motel is supposed to be old Western and attract tourists, it's important to note because this motel is not existent anymore. There is an empty space, and it's really a representation of demolition and renewal. We wanted to take a closer look at the empty space and see how there are chemical canisters on the land, and we can see that the city really maintains this empty space clean because it's really trying to bring the presence of agriculture and how Buena Park was originally founded, which were fields. So maintaining this land clean, it's really a symbol of trying to preserve this original aesthetic of fields that Buena Park was trying to go for. Now we're going to be looking at McDonald's and Claim Jumper. These two restaurants are really trying to keep the old Western aesthetic, but because it's getting closer to Knott's, and Knott's, of course, is going for the old Western look. Now, McDonald's is really important as we get a close-up of it because you can see the sign is in disrepair, and it really symbolizes how unsuccessful the architecture is because they are not really showing the restructuring of this time period, and instead they're resorting to using modern tactics like placing images of the meals and of drinks to get customers to buy this at this McDonald's location. Claim Jumper, on the other hand, was very successful in putting the old and the new together because it's kept very modern and nice, and it doesn't have any rundowns like McDonald's is. And this is very important because it's really attracting customers to go in and enjoy. The last place we're going to be looking at, which is the most popular place in Buena Park, is Knott's Berry Farm. This is the most popular landmark in Buena Park, and because of this, many other locations that we just looked at are overlooked by tourists and other individuals because it's not as popular or well known as Knott's. Now, if we look at this video, we can see that the hotel and parking lots are the very first things that we captured, and that's because this is a symbol of industrialism, and we wanted to note this because it's important to discuss how Knott's isn't keeping the original traditional aesthetic, which is Old Western. The hotel and the parking lots are really a symbol of industrialization and tourism and capitalism, and really just moving away from the traditional agricultural fields that Knott's was originally founded in. However, Knott's does still preserve some of their traditions. For example, we can see that there's a lot of wagons that are still there. We can see the colors and how a lot of these buildings and stores are made from wood. The color red is very important because it's like a symbol of farms and giving that agricultural aesthetic, because the name is obviously Knott's Berry Farm. Another thing we wanted to look at were the rides. As you can see, the rides really emphasize the United States and the patriotism that Buena Park has for the country. The rides have the colors of the American flags, and one of the rides also has an American flag displayed at the very top, and this is just an important aspect to really look at and digest because it really shows how much love Buena Park has for the United States. Now, lastly, the last thing I want to discuss is the open space. These open spaces are very big here in Buena Park because this is where the workers, the employees of Knott's, have their horses and practice riding horses with the wagons, and it just gives a very old Western aesthetic that Knott's is trying to keep and have. And this is just very symbolic of the gold rush, where many individuals were coming to Midwestern states, and also states like California. They came in their wagons and their horses, and this open spaces are really just to commemorate all of this traditional historic events that happened in California and in Buena Park. Now, in conclusion, we would like to thank you for listening to our discussion of Buena Park, our walk in the city, and we really thank you for your time. Now, this is Karla Torres and Andrew Leung. Thank you.